What is up, Trailblazers, and welcome back to the channel. I'm Moth, and today's video we're going to be talking about some ideal supports that I think will do well for Kafka and the new DoT teams set to drop in the second part of 1.2. Just as a quick disclaimer, this video does not contain any leaks or spoilers for Kafka's kit, light cone, or any other information available only from the second part of 1.2. Due to the information that could be changed upon release, I will not be making any best in slot recommendations or commenting on builds for characters not already released, and instead we will be talking about supports for Kafka and DoT teams more generally. If anything does change after the game is updated, I will of course update my content and will recover a video based on any changes with my Kafka guide. With that little piece of information covered, as it currently stands, whenever people talk about Kafka or the new DoT team quote meta unquote, it's usually under the guise of her pairing well with her banner counterparts Sampo, Luka and Serval because of their ability to apply DoT on your enemies. With that said, there still exists a generic open slot for your potential third or fourth slotted characters such as your supports and your sustain classes. As such, in today's video, I'm going to be going over 3 supports already in the game that I think will pair great with the new DoT teams, and I'll also briefly cover our other support characters in the Harmony and Nihility paths that I think you can find much better value elsewhere. What I won't be doing in this video is going over healers and tanks, as I found these to be pretty flex in things like team building. With that said, let's get into it. So, starting with number 1, Pela, AoE defense shredding. It is also worth adding a caveat that a lot of the support planning that I have today is based on around the application of normal DoTs, and I did do a throwaway explanation to the difference between break DoTs and normal DoTs in my Sampo character guide video, which I will link below, but also there's a ton of new recent DoT content out there, very easy to find, and I'll link some resources below as well. For me personally, Pela was one of those characters that saw a massive amount of interest at release because of her ability to defense shred your enemies. If you don't know already, your normal DoT applications do scale with damage modifiers such as attack, and so Pela's ability to defense shred your enemies makes her a great support character for DoT damage dealers like Sampo. Additionally, Pela's A4 trace, the secret strategy, has a 10% team effect hit rate buff, which can be very helpful in hitting those minimum 67% effect hit rate thresholds that we've been seeing on a lot of debuffers. When thinking about bringing Pela to the fray in a DoT team, you can consider using some of your original Fleet of the Ageless planetary ornament sets to increase all of her allies' attack by 8%. And Pela can also highly benefit from being the wearer of the 3 event light cone before the tutorial mission starts. As such, if you've already invested in your Pela, she can be a great flex slot support option when trying to build out your DoT teams. Moving on to another character in a similar position to Pela is Silver Wolf. In a similar vein to Pela, we have Silver Wolf, who essentially swaps the AoE part of defense shredding for a more targeted debuff application. In a very rough summary, Silver Wolf's element percent debuff can imbue a new weakness to a single enemy, making it much easier to confidently slot in a variety of DoT characters like Kafka, Sampo, and Luka, who all deal different element type damage. Alternatively, for those who are looking forward to pairing Serval with Kafka, with the 2 lightning characters you'll also greatly increase the percent chance of applying a lightning weakness to the enemies not already prone to lightning weakness. With that said, it will be worth noting that Serval and Silver Wolf synergy will warrant some testing in a DoT space, as Serval has typically relied on her damage being to an area of effect, where Silver Wolf likes to focus down one specific character. In addition, one of Silver Wolf's weaknesses is that she can be quite demanding on your skill points, and so generally having a nice skill point friendly character like Sampo will hopefully lead to some great synergy. With all that covered, we still haven't also mentioned that Silver Wolf brings with her the ability to debuff enemies' attack, defense, and speed through her talent to apply bugs. All things considered, Silver Wolf having the ability to apply all resistance reduction makes her a great flex support alternative to Pela when you're involved in battles with one significant enemy, and the ability to add on additional debuffs to the enemy is going to make her a very valued team member in battles where you're fighting against one very strong individual boss monster. For our third suggested support character today, I'm going with Asta, and this one's going to take a little more explanation than the defense shredders. Now, I don't want to get too heavy-handed on speed breakpoints because there's already a ton of guide videos and documentation out there, and I'll link to some resources in the description below. In a sentence, the faster your character's speed, the less time they wait between their next action, and the more actions per turn you can take with that character. Now, there is a lot of conjecture about the essential base speed that you should aim a character's speed to be for hitting the correct speed breakpoints, and typically for DoT characters like Sampo, for example, you will want to emphasize a balance between attack and speed as a priority over any other stat once you've hit your minimum 67% EHR threshold. Now, there are some diminishing returns at ridiculously high speeds when you start to sacrifice offensive stats, and so this is where Asta comes into play. When pairing your DoT characters with Asta for maximum team-wide speed boost, you're going to want to have her with maximum investment. Your level 10 to 12 Asta ult buff will boost your team's speed a whopping 50 to 53 speed points, making for some unreal opportunities for a high-speed Kafka and Sampo to trigger or restack their respective DoT effects when they'd be otherwise waiting for the enemy to take their turn. For Asta to be absolutely most effective though, you are going to want your DPSs like Kafka and your Sampos to be coming to the table with a whopping 148.2% speed to get the most out of her. With that said, this is only looking at the maximum value, and being able to have that 50 to 53 speed boost on a level 12 ult is incredible and will really help you meet some of the minimum speed goals that you might want if you've otherwise not picked up those substat roles. But Asta's contributions don't just stop at speed. Depending on investment, Asta is going to prove to be a formidable attack percent support for DoT teams too. Given that normal DoT scales off of attack, Asta's ability to buff the whole party's attack based on her talent stacks is amazing passive to bring to your battles. Even further, Asta can bring even more generic support in her equipment loadout. She can take advantage of the 4-piece messenger of traversing hackerspace to further help you cross those speed thresholds. Now, it is worth noting that a lot of Asta's streamlined value will come from her investment. Asta is going to be a very powerful addition to Kafka's arsenal, but she will be extremely demanding on your skill point economy. To ensure at least one ult every 2 turns, you're going to want to have your Asta at her 4th Eidolon, which gives her an ERR percent buff at 2 talent stacks. And you'll also want to further double down in some cases on energy regen rate percent rope. On top of that, you can also pre-prepare by considering certain planar ornament sets like the Sprightly Von Chat and light cones like a max superimposed meshing cogs or memories of the past. With the 3 ideal supports covered, let's briefly cover some other supports and why I wouldn't necessarily use them in your DoT teams. For Yukong specifically, unfortunately her crit buffing capabilities are wasted a lot here as normal DoT applications will not scale with crit, and so she's better used elsewhere. For Well, I'd say his value lies in some other teams. Well, while he is another cross between a sub DPS and debuffer like Silver Wolf, he shines more in a hyper carry team for his ability to amplify damage and slow down / immobilize enemies. While I wouldn't say he's a bad pick, I also don't think he's the best pick when trying to flex in a support option. Next, with Bronya and Tingyun, I do strongly feel like you won't get the maximum value out of their kits. Both Bronya and Tingyun like to optimize the damage of a specific carry character, which will lead to some difficult decision making in a double or even triple DoT team, because the DoT team synergy lies with the ability for all team members to maximize their output. Like with Well, while the pickup isn't necessarily a bad one, I don't think it's necessarily optimal either, and in my current understanding of the game, you'd be better off investing in some of the other supports mentioned, where you can either give benefit to your whole team, or alternatively you can specifically debuff the enemies so that your whole team can take advantage of those different status effects on the field. And that's all I have for you today, guys. It's a very quick one well, it's 8 minutes, but it's a very quick one for once. I hope you enjoyed the content. Please let me know if you're going to pull for Kafka, Luka, Sampo, or even Serval Eidolons. And as always, I'll hopefully see you in the next one. Thanks and bye.